guys, what's up? My name is Dom. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new to my channel, I typically make bookish content, movie content, and anything else in between because I like to do whatever I want on this channel, and today's going to be bookish content. Today we are doing a bookish wrap-up of the past 2 months, May and June, because I forgot to do the May wrap-up and I was going to do it and just post it late, but it became so late that I was like, I might as well combine the two. So here we are. June has been a pretty rough month, hence why I haven't been uploading a lot. There's just been a lot going on. I'm like switching between jobs right now. Life is just chaotic and I'm trying to find a schedule because I'm debating whether or not starting a second channel to watch anime on, because I'm almost done with the Tokyo Ghoul series, and since I'm reacting to movies based on books I've read, I'm like, well, I have to react to the Tokyo Ghoul series. But like, I don't have the anime audience on this channel, so I was thinking of starting a new channel. I don't know yet, plus there's so much anime I've never seen before, and I could post that on the channel too. It's just a lot, and I'm trying to get my life together. So I actually wrote down a script of some sort, because usually I just like free verse these. But I have 10 books to wrap up today, and then what I'm currently reading and my possible TBR that's kind of non-existent, but I'll talk about it anyway. And let's just get started. So the first book I read was Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. I reread this because, like I've said in past videos, I am rereading a book I had to read for school every year. In the month of May, that was 5th grade, and I had to read Tuck Everlasting. So this is about a girl named Winnie. This takes place in like the early 1900s, and it's about a girl named Winnie who meets the Tuck family, and she's noticing they're not aging. Why aren't they aging? Gotta read to find out. I loved this book back in 5th grade. I thought it was absolutely amazing. Then I reread it, and I was terribly, terribly disappointed. Because what did I give it? I gave it 2.75 out of 5 stars. This book is like a great example, because you know how they say, like, if there's something you loved in your childhood, don't reread it, don't rewatch it, don't whatever the media was, because it will not be the same. This is a perfect example of that, because now that I'm older, I noticed a lot of things. First of all, it's highly hinted that Winnie has a crush on one of the sons, and the son kind of has a crush on her, especially like when the ending comes, you'll know what I'm talking about. And like, I didn't remember Winnie's age, because I know there's a movie about this, and the Gilmore Girls, like the girl who plays Rory, she's Winnie, so that means they aged her up, because Winnie's only 10, and Jessie is 17, so I was a little like, about that age gap. Like, in Winnie's defense, that was like a childhood crush. Like, I remember what it was like being 10, 11, you know, crushing on these 16-year-old celebrities. But it's just the fact that a 17-year-old boy was like, this 10-year-old's gonna be my wife one day. That was a little, like, weird. And I know the time period this book takes place in. I know when it was written. Still wasn't a fan. Just my main complaint with it this time around, that it was extremely underwhelming. I was very, very bored. It takes place faster in a shorter time period than I thought it did. I remember it, for some reason in my memory, I remember it taking place within like weeks, but it only takes place in the matter of like a couple days, and I just wasn't a fan. The ending was good. Like, the last chapter, the way that was worded and like the contentment it gave me was okay, and that's why I actually upped the rating. At first I was only going to give it 2 out of 5 stars, but then the ending came and it's still not a 3 out of 5 star read. Hence the 2.75 stars. My next read was The Martian by Andy Weir. This is about a guy who goes on a space exploration thing with his team. A storm happens on Mars where they landed. His team got out safely, but he did not, so he is stranded on the planet Mars. Overall, I only gave this book 3 out of 5 stars because it was good. It was a good book. It was hilarious. Mark Watney's hilarious. But he would go on these scientific rants, and he would get into detail about like the physics and the chemistry of it all. And I don't care about chemistry, I don't care about physics. I did poorly in those in both high school and college. But he would get into like the nitty-gritty details of it, which I know some people love, but for me, I didn't care, so I was glossing over those parts, and like, it took away some of the reading enjoyment for me, and it's like a huge chunk of the book. So for a lot of the book, I was just skimming, and I don't want to skim books I really want to enjoy. So I guess to sum that up, a lot of the science in this book went over my head, which I should have seen coming. This is a science fiction novel, so I should have seen it coming that he was going to get into the nitty-gritty details of it all, but still, I'm a zoologist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a physicist, so it all went over my head. But what I did appreciate is that Watney is a lovable character, and he spends the whole time, no, not the whole time, but he spends the majority of the time in the book in good spirits, instead of wallowing, which I thought was an interesting choice. So it balanced some things out, because when you read this book, everything that could go wrong did, which I did kind of appreciate, because I feel like any other writer, things would have been solved a little too easily. And sometimes he would like think of these plans and I'm like, nah, that's a little too easy, and sure enough something bad happened. And I appreciate that because I'm assuming if we do in real life ever get to the point where humans can get on Mars, shit is gonna go bad. Like, it's gonna be a shit show. So yeah, everything that could go bad did, but I think what balanced it out was the fact that Watney was so funny and he took everything in great strides. It just balanced out what would be the depression, I guess, because I've read other books where characters spend the whole time wallowing, so then something good happens, because you need that good thing to happen to balance out the wallowing. So here's this guy who makes a joke about everything. In order to balance that out, you do need these bad things to happen, and I thought Andy Weir did a very good job with that. Weirdly enough, so this book does go into different point of views at times, and weirdly enough, I did enjoy those point of views more than I enjoyed the logs, even though they were just as info-dumpy and overwhelming, like the science portion of it, as the logs. But I think after a while, after reading a diary entry for so long, it was just nice to get to a different point of view. But yes, 3 out of 5 stars. So then I listened to The Six Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert. I'm not too sure about how she pronounces that. So this is the audiobook I listened to in the month of May, because if you've noticed, I've been listening to an audiobook every month. And so scientists say there have been great big 5 mass extinctions. That was a lot of words for one simple thing. There has been 5 mass extinctions throughout history, and scientists think we are currently in the 6th mass extinction. So this book talks about that. If I remember correctly, Elizabeth Colbert, she's not even a zoologist, a conservation biologist, a biologist, ecologist, what have you. She's just a journalist, but this is her expertise in journalism. Like, she talks about species dying out and all that. From what I've gathered in the book, that could be wrong. But this is a very important book because species are dying out, and each chapter focuses on specific examples. Like, the first chapter is about a frog that is mysteriously disappearing. One was about, you know, dinosaurs, obviously. One is about the coral reefs, and so on and so forth. And it should be important to me because I am a zoology major. I'm hesitating calling myself a zoologist just yet because I'm trying to enter that career field right now. But like, this is a topic I talked about extensively in college. I still have all my extinction. I took a class called Extinction of Species, which was my favorite class in college, the best class I ever took. Still have all those notes. I still have some of my textbooks. So this should be important to me. But as a whole, I was going to call it a story, but as a whole, this book is boring. And that's all I could say about it. Like, half the time I was just kind of dozing when listening to this, and it's one of those things where if you miss one line, you gotta go back because each line builds off the last one. Like, nothing was filler. It was just very textbooky, which isn't necessarily bad given the subject matter, but it's just what made it so boring for me. I have a very hard time reading textbooks, and that's what made me give this one 2 out of 5 stars overall. But important information though, so that's an unfortunate rating for an important book. So then the last book I read in May, I think, this is either the last or the second to last, but it's Tokyo Ghoul Re Volume 13. This is the 13th book of a sequel series, so I can't really describe what this one's about. But again, if you are new here, Tokyo Ghoul is about a boy named Ken Kaneki who wants to go on a date, but he lives in Tokyo, Japan, which is running amok with ghouls. Ghouls are these creatures that present themselves as humans, but they eat humans. They're scary, people are scared of them, but then one day Kaneki goes in the States, things go wrong, gets an organ transplant, and he is now half ghoul, half human. And the rest of the series is him thinking about that. There's a lot of morally gray within this series and a lot of mental anguish, which I live for. And fun fact, I've mentioned this in the past, I think, but this series was inspired by the Metamorphosis by, what the hell's his name? Kafka? I forgot what his first name is, and I have not read that book, so I need to. But moving on, I gave this volume 3 out of 5 stars. There was a lot of back and forth between point of views, which kind of made the pacing a little jarring. It's the beginning of a new arc, and sometimes the beginnings of arcs could be a little slow going because they're kind of info dumpy and they're trying to set up the rest of the arc, so that's what this volume felt like, just a setup. But there is a part where you really do get to see how much Kaneki has changed throughout the series, because all these people, I'm trying to say this without spoiling, but all these people like come together and they're arguing with one another, and it's Kaneki like mulling all of that over, and you just see how much he has gone through over the sequence of this series. So then the next book I read was The Boy Who Dared by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. This is a World War II story. This is actually based on a true story. So this is about a boy, what is his name? Helmuth Hubener. So it's the true story of a boy growing up in Nazi Germany. He is German, he's not Jewish. He joined Hitler Youth and all that. And he sees that there's something wrong with the way the media is portraying the war. and he finds it a little suspicious that Germany is always coming out on top. He takes things into his own hands to try to solve this problem. So I give this book 3 out of 5 stars because I commend Helmut's bravery, but I don't really like Bartoletti's writing style. It is, I don't want to call it juvenile because it is a middle grade read, but I've read middle grade books that are written a lot better than this. So like, I mean, she's not a bad writer by any means, but I've just, when it comes to middle grade, I have definitely read better. Plus, at some points it did drag. I think she did include information that didn't need to be there. My biggest gripe with it is that this whole book is just one single chapter. And it made this book seem longer than it actually is. Like, how long is it? It's only 202 pages, 10 of which are just the index. So why does it feel longer? Like, I don't understand why there was a choice to make it all one chapter. I mean, still good. There are a few points where I was just like, oh my god. And like, I mean, at the end I did tear up a little. But as a whole, like, it's a good book, just not the greatest I've ever read. So then the next book I read was The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. It's about a man who is from, presumably, planet Earth. He calls it Terra. We can assume it's Earth. He goes to a new planet where people are androgynous, and that's her choice of word. They're androgynous. They don't really have genitals. There's this thing called chemering, which we can assume is sex, and they take on whatever gender at random. So now that I'm reading the back of the cover, to sum that up, gender is fluid. That's all I had to say. But our main character wants this planet to join some like intergalactic, what's the word she used? Civilization. I'm losing it today. And shit ensues, blah blah blah. Y'all, I rarely DNF books, but I DNF'd this one. I DNF'd it at 50%. I know, and it's like, it's Ursula K. Le Guin. This is my first book by her, and I already DNF'd a book. I am learning over the years that I am not a huge sci-fi fan. I'll keep reading it once in a while because sometimes I'll find like a hidden gem. This definitely was not a hidden gem for me. And it's unfortunate because I think the conversations about sexuality and gender in this book are very important conversations to have. But the plot outside of that just wasn't grabbing my attention. I thought it was boring, honestly. At one point I put the book down because I decided maybe just read a chapter every day rather than like all the pages I was reading. And I put it down because I was reading something else, and it was a library book, so I had to read that, you know, that something else quickly. But I did not pick up this book for 2 weeks, and after those 2 weeks I dreaded picking it up. I just never wanted to pick it up again. So I'm like, you know what, if I feel this strongly about it, I'm just not gonna read it. I'll just read a summary of it on Wikipedia. And you know what, I'm actually glad I never picked it up again, because after reading the summary, I'm like, wow, this would have been a waste of my time. So it's unfortunate because it is my first Ursula K. Le Guin book. Will I give her a second chance? Like, maybe, but like also I know she's a huge sci-fi writer, and I'm learning sci-fi is not my thing. So it's like, I don't want to feel like I have to pick up another book by her, but we'll see. But yeah, I said but a lot, wow. But I only gave this book 1 out of 5 stars. So after that, I reread Number the Stars by Lois Lowry. This is a book I read for my school reread. The month of June was for 6th grade. I had to read this book in 6th grade. I've already told that story before, and I'll link that video up above so you know what I'm talking about. But this book takes place in 1943 Denmark, Nazi-occupied Denmark. Our main character, Anne-Marie, is her name Anne-Marie? Yes. Anne-Marie, her best friend is Jewish, and then her family comes together to help her Jewish friend and her parents survive the war. When I was younger, I wasn't like a huge fan of this book, but this time around I did give it 3.75 out of 5 stars. There was like nothing new about it that I haven't known before. Like, it would be more harrowing if I read it appropriately in 6th grade, because I would say this is a beginner's novel to World War II, but just this time around, being older and having read all the books I have on World War II, like, it's nothing like extraordinary, but like, it was good nonetheless. So the next book was my audiobook, and that was Ghetto Side, True Story of Murder in America by Jill Leovy. So this is a nonfiction book, and it discusses gang violence and how cops and detectives deal with that. It focuses primarily in LA, I believe it was, and there is a specific crime it focuses on, but sometimes it will sidetrack the focus on other crimes. So the main message of this book is that law enforcement is corrupt. This book talks about is the concept of black on black crime, because people always bring that up in an argument. Whenever there's an argument about this, someone has to bring that up. This author points out, even in those crimes, cases involving black people are often disregarded. They have a very, very low solving rate compared to, you know, crimes that deal with white people, and that's something she discusses. And one of the main detectives that she focuses on has also noticed that. The detective himself also notices that a lot of his coworkers give up on cases, but his big thing is that he doesn't want to. So by the end of the year, I think they say he has like an 80% success rate, which is extremely high compared to his coworkers. And then their main story they're focusing on is this black detective whose son was shot and killed because of gang violence. Like, his son wasn't involved, but he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. So they talk about that, and then they talk about the detective who actually did solve it. And it was just a very interesting, like, nonfiction book, because she did bring in both sides. Like, she did talk about the black detective's family, she talked about the white detective's family, she went into the background of all the victims of gang violence that she talked about, she went into the backgrounds of the gang members that caused this violence, and it was a lot of information to take in. I think one of the most harrowing aspects she talks about in this book is one of the reasons these crimes have such a low success rate of being, you know, closed and being solved is because there's just so many people who don't care. Like, she talked about how many detectives will just give up on their cases and push them aside. And that's just sad to me. And then she talks about, like, the fear in some people, because there's a lot of witnesses, but they don't want to come forward because they're scared for their own lives. They're scared that if they come forward, they will be killed too, which is a very valid fear, especially when you hear some of the stuff they talk about in this book. It's difficult for everyone involved. Like, the white detective she was talking about, he always has difficulty trying to get people on board, and then he himself can't blame them, but he does what he can. Like, there was one witness he had where he moved her into a hotel that was like 2 cities away to make sure she was safe. And it was just, there was a lot, and then she would bring up other cases of people who died in these violent crimes. Some of them were children. And I did cry at a few times. Well, like, not like sob, but like I had tears in my eyes a few times. It was just a very harrowing book to listen to, and I think everyone should listen to it. And then I ended up giving it 4.75 out of 5 stars. Then I read Tokyo Ghoul Re Volume 14. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. But this one, to sum it up, it was just an emotional roller coaster. So much was going on at once. There was the unlikeliness of allies that I loved. Like, I would have never thought these people would ever come together, and they did. Some people I just absolutely adore, like Toka. Protect her at all costs. Protect Kaneki at all costs, of course. But protect Toka at all costs, protect my ship at all costs, the Kaneki Toka ship. There's one character that pissed me the fuck off, but like, he's supposed to piss you the fuck off, so that's a testament to how well written he is. There's a cliffhanger at the end. I don't know what it is with this man ending these volumes on cliffhangers, but like, I gotta read the last 2, but I'm scared to read the last 2. There's only 2 left, and I don't want this era to end. So then the last book I read was Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. This is a typical stalker story. This kid has been stalked all throughout his childhood. It started out with a bunch of photographs, and then in his adult years he goes to his mom and he's trying to find out the truth. This book has a very interesting background because our author actually originally wrote this on a Reddit thread, and it kind of reads as such, but like, it's still good. That's not my gripe about it at all in the slightest. I ended up giving this book 4.75 stars. See, my thing with this book, I was so confused in the beginning. Not confused, like I knew what was going on, but I was confused how I felt about the pacing. Because the thing with this book, it is very, very slow paced, and at times I was like, alright, get on with it. And he'll introduce things that are not important, and you're like, why does this matter? Just for you to get to the end of the chapter and realize those small unimportant details are actually important. And each chapter sent chills down my spine because of how creeped out I felt. And it was because of the slow pace, especially when I got to the end of the book. That's when I realized the reason I love this book so much is because of the slow pace. Usually I'm not a fan of slow paced stories, but like this one, I don't know what it was, but like, that's why, see, this is why I don't like DNFing books, because sometimes I'll like hate something, but then I get to the end of the book and realize the thing I didn't like was done on purpose and is what actually made the book good. Like in this case, very slow, but that's what made the book so creepy. I mean, at one point I was like sick to my stomach, because like, not even one point, multiple points, I was just sick to my stomach. And the other thing I enjoyed about this is that the stalker, I was expecting some big reveal, but it's not a big reveal at all. Like in the grand scheme of things, it's actually a very simple stalker story, but like, I don't know, it just still creeped me out, and I actually kind of like how it wasn't some big reveal, because that's how real life kind of works. Like in all these stories with a stalker, the main character always knows who the stalker is, but whenever I read about these real life stories, these real life crimes, or I see crimes on the news, a lot of the times the person didn't know who that stalker was, and that's how this book was. Maybe that's why it creeped me out, because it's so like similar to real life stories. And another thing I like this book is our narrator's never named, so it's almost as if our narrator is Dathan Auerbach himself. So you know, it's kind of like a Lemony Snicket thing. Like it feels like our author is the character in a book, and I felt like I was reading an autobiography, and I actually had to when writing my notes, I had to double check it wasn't an autobiography. It is a work of fiction, but it reads like a freaky autobiography, and like this might be my favorite book of the year so far. I don't know, but I've been looking for horror books that like freak me out the way this one did, and I finally got it, and I'm so happy. So now we're gonna move on to my currently reading list. That is just Mommy Dearest by Christine Crawford. If you don't know who this is the daughter of the acclaimed actress Joan Crawford. She was an actress from like the golden age of Hollywood, died in the 70s, and after Joan died, Christine wrote this book as a testament to her past, because apparently Joan Crawford, not apparently, I'm reading the book, but because Joan Crawford abused her. She physically and mentally abused Christine. This book was very controversial when it came out because, you know, it came out back in the 80s, I want to say, like early 80s, something around that time. Back then, you know, child abuse wasn't really talked about the way it is now. Plus, a lot of Joan Crawford fans, and just people in general, accuse Christine of faking it because, you know, no one wants to hear that this greatly loved, acclaimed actress was a child abuser. Like, from what I'm like reading of sources, it's almost like accusing of like Judy Garland and Audrey Hepburn of these crimes. So it was like a huge deal when this came out. I know it has that like really shitty movie adaptation. Actually, I saw Jenny KD's video talking about the movie, and that's why I wanted to read this book, because I was like, that is absurd. And some of the shit Joan Crawford has done, that woman was insane. How do you live with yourself doing that to children, you know? And I'm not even like halfway through the book. I'm only 35% of the way through, and so much has happened. Girl, what was wrong with Joan Crawford? As for my TBR, we have my audiobook, which is Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, I think her last name is. This is a World War II story. Can't get more specific than that, because I already forgot what the synopsis was, but it's been on my Goodreads TBR for years. Finally getting it out of the way. A book I'm going to reread for school, because July is the month of 7th grade. I really don't know. I'm going to have you guys help me out, because I could read either The Giver by Lois Lowry, so that will be my 3rd time reading the book, or I could reread books I haven't touched since 7th grade, and I know one of those books is Nothing But the Truth, Out of the Dust. Nothing But the Truth is a whole shebang about the Star-Spangled Banner. Out of the Dust is about living in the Dust Bowl. Yeah, so it's either those 3 books, and I don't know which one I want to reread, so let me know down in the comments what you guys would find more interesting. And then I want to start my big book of the year. If you are new here, I try to read like a big book every year. I started with Les Miserables a few years ago. I have since read, you know, War and Peace, The Divine Comedy, The Count of Monte Cristo. Last year was It by Stephen King. This year is going to be Under the Dome by Stephen King. I'm hesitating on buying this one, but I know my library has a physical copy, so that's the one I'm going to get. But this is about a small town. They were just minding their own business, when suddenly this dome encapsulated the whole town. They can't get it. They can't even hear people. They could see people from the other side because it's an invisible dome, but they can't hear them. This was a CBS TV show a few years back. I remember it was like one of their summer specials. Only lasted 2 seasons. You didn't get much answers at all. But Victoria from Twilight was in it. The first Victoria from Twilight was in it. That I remember. And I remember the other character was really cute. And I remember at the time, because I think I was like early high school when this happened, I remember the main like kid character, I thought he was cute at the time. There you have it. I will be vlogging this experience because I like to vlog my like big book experience, so look forward to that. And that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video because I know this is a lot of books to talk about. Usually I don't talk about this many books in one video, but that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, comment, subscribe. Y'all know the drill. And without further ado, I'm gonna peace out and I'll see you guys later. Ciao a tutti.